Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Wolverine number 42, cover dated late July 1991. So the title is on sale twice a month in the summer months of 1991. This is part 2 of a 3-part storyline. The cover caption proclaims that it features Cable, Sabretooth and now Nick Fury, Forge and Jubilee. Cover is by Marc Silvestri and Dan Green, and you're looking at 2 different versions of the cover. This is the original one here, and this is the reprint. So popular was this issue that it went to a second printing, and in order to distinguish it from the original, Marvel had it printed with this gold ink here for the background of the cover scene. So a really nice drawing and composition by Marc Silvestri. Something to note here is how the skyscraper buildings are ruled in ink by Dan Green with a straight edge in the foreground. But as you go into the background there, farther and farther away, you've got Dan Green inking the lines on those skyscraper buildings freehand. So a point I've made in the past about Green's inking on Silvestri, and Silvestri himself as a penciler is a penciler who doesn't like using a ruler or straight edge, but obviously for this is the kind of background you'd be more accustomed to in a Spider-Man comic or a Daredevil comic even. So Silvestri, not usually someone drawing this kind of cityscape scene, does a really good job on it, but so very interesting to see Dan Green inking freehand those buildings that are farther away in the background. Really interesting technique there, or decision, because the eye is fooled in terms of those distant, more wavy lines. Anyway, let's open this one up and get into the story. And I'm going to work with the second printing here. So when I open this up to the splash page, you can see down here that it is indeed a second printing. Now there are some color errors in this particular comic, and they haven't been fixed in the second printing. So it truly is a second printing and not a revised printing with corrections. Title of the story is Papa Was a Rolling Stone. That alludes to the fact that in the previous issue, Sabretooth is claimed explicitly to be Wolverine's father, something that Claremont played around with, hinting at during his tenure on his original run on Uncanny X-Men, but now Hama making it plain in the previous issue. But you'll see in this one that it's going to be undone by the end of this issue. And the creative team, Larry Hama script, Marc Silvestri on breakdowns, that's pencil breakdowns. And that's interesting because we have Dan Green on ink finishes, but that means that Silvestri is providing loose penciled breakdowns, and that is obviously a response to the fact that the comic has gone bi-weekly during the summer months, and he needs to get those pages out more quickly in order to keep to the schedule. The lettering is by Pat Brousseau, and Glynis Oliver is on colouring. So that's a pretty nice splash image there of Sabretooth and Wolverine battling it out underwater in the sewage system beneath the southern tip of Manhattan. And here we get Wolverine's first person narration. He's got to be crazy. We're trapped in a flooded tunnel with a steel door at one end and an iron grate at the other. And Sabretooth is still intent on killing me. That's as crazy as him thinking he's my father. So let's get into the rest of the story, because outside that door, that metal door, we've got Cable and LCD on the other side. And of course, LCD is instructing Cable to aim his gun and blast off the lock on the door. But Cable is skeptical, isn't entirely sure that it's Wolverine on the other side. But when, of course, those adamantium claws pop out through the metal door, LCD makes the point, yeah, we can be sure that it's Wolverine. Shoot out the lock, she says. Let him out before he drowns. But Cable here, and true to his characterization in this period of continuity, says, no way. That next tunnel is completely flooded. I may be half bionic, but he is not going to risk himself, but I can drown just as easily as the next guy. So LCD goes to grab the gun from him, and he slaps her off. And here he continues to say, I can think of 20 or 30 million people I'd risk my neck for before I'd put it on the line for him, for Wolverine. So LCD removes her head. She is a type of android, but packed with plastic explosives. And this is a pretty comical scene where she throws her own head and bonks Cable in the side of his head. Now that's on the bionic side of his head as well, so he's going to be protected somewhat by his metallic skull on that side of his body. But a nice little piece of cartooning there by Marc Silvestri. Let's continue and see what happens next. More comic cartooning by Silvestri as LCD somehow orientates her head so as to chomp down on Cable's shin, and she has the rest of her body grab his huge gun and blast off the lock on the door. So that's very smooth storytelling there by Silvestri. And now, of course, we get another big splash image of Sabretooth and Wolverine pouring out from the tunnel on the other side of the door. Nicely done. But you can see here that the line work is a little bit more simple, obviously because Silvestri providing Dan Green with those looser penciled breakdowns, so not so much detail in the penciling as there was in the previous issue. And here we get one of these pages where there's definite coloring errors on this particular page. You can see the bright red and magenta there of Sabretooth and his costume, so something has gone wrong there, and it wasn't corrected before going to the printers, and indeed wasn't corrected for the reprint as well, a point I made earlier. I like the layouts here on this particular page where LCD underwater is grabbing her own head and reattaching it, but you have a sense of the disorientation of that water that is pouring out of the tunnel here on the page with those particular panel layouts there. Cable looking over her shoulder and LCD grabbing her own head underwater. So she calls out to Logan and he tells her to hang on, and Sabretooth here comments sourly, "Oh, ain't that sweet? That cute little thing gets to see me break your neck." And Wolverine says, "Don't count your vertebrae before they're cracked." But they are kind of are poured out of the main into the main causeway from their side tunnel, and they're finding themselves sliding along towards this closed grate at the end of the main causeway. So Wolverine puts it together. Somebody lowered the grate on the causeway, can't get through it, got to back up the flume, says maybe Cable. And Wolverine here says a romantically inclined salmon couldn't make it back up that flume against this avalanche of garbage. So you can see them here pressed up against the grid with all the garbage that is flowing down the storm drain tunnels and the main causeway. So Larry Hama has put in some research into how the storm drains and sewage tunnels under Manhattan work for this particular issue. Something else I want to draw attention to before moving on from this particular 4-panel page is all the detail there of the clockwork gears and cogs and wheels of the mechanism for opening and closing the grate. So Silvestri didn't have to draw all of that as much as he did, and it gives some sense that he was interested in drawing that, and it looks great. It really sells the mechanism itself. And then we're up on the main street, but an interesting angle here where we've got this worm's eye or rat's eye view of Forge and Jubilee who are crossing the street. There's a big thunderstorm going on, and that's why the storm drains and sewage tunnels are overflowing. And Jubilee catches as they cross the road here to meet Forge's contact that he's phone called to come help them find Wolverine. She says, "Wait up, Forge. Hear that screaming? Warlock's Jube," says Forge. "They must be drowning like rats down there." And so we transition to see how the Morlocks are getting on. And in this period of Marvel continuity, their leader is Mask, and he's there pondering how there could be a clogging at Gate 23, the South Street outlet. All them grates, he thinks, have automatic self-cleaning mechanisms, But his underling there says, not old great 23, it's thoroughly ancient, like ultra moldy oldie. And Mask says, then the machinery has to be switched on manually. Now, where is that switch? What did you say the great number was? So Mask doesn't know anything about Wolverine, Cable and LCD and the peril they're facing, but circumstances are such that he's about to help them out if he can find the manual switch for opening the grate. So Cable here is losing patience with the whole situation. He's thinking about blowing LCD away because it's all her fault as he sees it, for them being in the situation they're in, and in particular him being in that situation because she blew the lock off the door. But Wolverine uses his adamantium claws to slash apart into pieces Cable's handgun, and just at the operative moment, up leaps Sabretooth from all that garbage, and he says, I'm fixing to do something about Wolverine being killed. And Wolverine responds, Sabretooth, I've had enough. I've about had it with you. Notice here the can of beer. It's Duff brand beer, straight out of The Simpsons. So a nice little Easter egg there. And then we're back with Mask, and he finds the manual switch and pulls it. So again, all this clockwork, mechanical gear starts creaking into life. And we get these great sound effects by Pat Brousseau as the grid starts opening and closing, chomping up the garbage before it goes out into the East River. And so LCD is alarmed that they're going to be crushed and ground up like chopped chuck. So she appeals to Wolverine to stop slicing up his father and listen to her. And Wolverine here comically shouts out that he's not my father. So LCD is able to squeeze between the grid, and Wolverine tells her, you just get yourself out of here and keep on going. Think some nice thoughts about me now and then. And Sabretooth, disgusted, you're so downright mushy. It's like to make me puke. That's going to cramp my style when I chomp down on your jugular. So Cable intervenes. In that case, you can chew on this for an appetizer. Never figured a mean old cuss like you would have a sentimental fool for a son. Imagine getting all misty over a machine. And Sabretooth here punches Cable straight in the face. Thanks for reminding me, Cable. I hate you a whole bunch too, because these two have had clashes over in the pages of New Mutants. Which reminds me to note that it really was a canny choice on the part of, was it Bob Harris, instructing Larry Hama to include Cable in this particular issue, because this issue takes place between the end of New Mutants 100, when there was about 3 months where there was no new comic for readers of New Mutants, until the arrival of X-Force number 1, cover dated August 1991. So in that period between the end of New Mutants and the new title X-Force number 1, where was Cable and what was he up to? Well, Larry Hama includes him in Wolverine, and sales go up and up to the point that, as you saw, this issue went to a second printing. Really, really shrewd choice on the part of whether it was Bob Harris or Larry Hama, but it was a smart idea. So here we see LCD. She's going to sacrifice herself again for Logan. She is getting into the middle of all that clockwork machinery, all those wheels and gears, and it seems that her body has, well, as we've seen before, parts of her body can be detached. So she detaches her head, and remember, there are all those explosives in her torso and limbs, and she sets off the firing command. So the whole thing explodes, knocks out all that machinery, and so Cable, Wolverine, even Sabretooth are able to escape the grate, even as Mask commands or orders that all the floodgates be opened and that everything is vented from all the tunnels, all the storm drains and sewer tunnels into the East River. So that's going to be following them into the river there. We can see it just pouring out like an avalanche of water. And this is who Forge was calling in a favor from. His contact in the previous issue turns out to be no less than Colonel Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. And one of Fury's underlings tells him we're picking up 3 heat sources on the infrared scanner. They weren't showing up just seconds ago, so they must have come out through the floodgates. And so the chopper there is hovering, waiting to see who they can pull out of the water. And Jubilee asks, is Wolvie down there? And Fury responds, it had better be him. I'd hate to think there was 2 guys in the world as ugly as that. And of course, that's funny because Donald Pierce made a doppelganger, a robot doppelganger of Wolverine. So there are in fact 2 guys in the world as ugly as that. And we'll see Albert towards the end of this issue, and he's even uglier than Wolverine is at this point. So I like the response here from Wolverine. I love you too. I love you too, Nick. And then Jubilee asks Cable, what's he doing here? Long story, kid. How's about hauling us in before we all bleed to death? So in they're all pulled, but what about Sabretooth? You can see that Cable there has LCD's head. And Wolverine tells the S.H.I.E.L.D. guys, better zap Sabretooth with a sedative dart and put him in restraints before you haul him aboard. So they endeavour to do that. And then the chopper pulls away. It's going to make its way to hospital. And what's happening here is they're getting tetanus shots for being in the sewage water. And Cable here just tosses LCD's head to Wolverine. And then she's got some bad news for him, which is that in terms of Wolverine wants to have Forge whip up a new body for her. And she says, it's too late, Logan. I'm running on auxiliary batteries right now. My main power source was in my torso along with my WE charges. Is that LE charges? Recharges. When my batteries run down in a matter of minutes. All of my memory, everything that makes me me, is going to crash. So Logan, or she continues and says, but I'm not afraid of crashing anymore. It's not so bad once you've a real friend. And here, like Larry Hama doesn't forget to give Sabretooth a funny line here where he says, all this sweetness is putting me into sugar shock. I just like that. That's good stuff. And then he escapes his bindings and attacks Wolverine again. That's a really nice anchor image there. And so they're going, Sabretooth's going crazy in the S.H.I.E.L.D. Helicopter, pushing Wolverine right to the edge, to the door of the helicopter. And Jubilee telling Cable to stop him. Cable grabs Sabretooth, the fight's over. Furface, not yet, he says, by a long shot. Not till I tear out my son's throat. And wow, look at that, he's just about ready to tear out Wolverine's throat indeed there. And you can see the look of horror on LCD's face, and somehow or other she maneuvers her head in order to chomp down on Sabretooth's neck. And he leaps from the side of the helicopter once again back down into the East River. That's a really nice page there. Now the colors on these pages are super saturated, so they're really, really bright. And Cable says she could have let go. She could have rolled clear. But she didn't. So they splash down in the water, and Wolverine is distraught. But Fury tells him, she told you her lights were going out in a matter of minutes. She wanted to do this last thing for you. Let her go. Let her go, he repeats. So you can see the sorrow on Wolverine's face. That's really nicely drawn, that 3/4 profile image. And how his hair is wet as well, from having been in the river. Nicely done. So one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. medical guys or technicians asks, who was that crazy guy? And Wolverine responds, he said he was my father. No way. Both your blood samples gave us some screwy readings, but the basic blood types are clearly discernible, and unless Gregor Mendel was dead wrong, the father of modern genetics, that wasn't your biological father who just took a dive into the East River. So Wolverine is taken by surprise by that piece of news. He was lying. Nice upshot 3/4 profile there on Wolverine. Nice colouring too from Glenn Oliver. I like the way that Fury, when he lights a cigar, she has included that yellow lighting, highlighting on his face as well. Nope, he really thought he was your pappy, Logan, says Fury. And then we pick up with Sabretooth and LCD in the East River. Nice open border panel there of them as they're sinking in the river. And LCD saying, I don't have enough power left to rip your throat out, but I don't care. I saved Mr. Logan from you. Go ahead and crush my head. I hope you cut yourself on the broken pieces. So Sabretooth there about to do so, but then somebody slashes him from behind with Wolverine-like claws. Is it Wolverine? Has he jumped from the helicopter? Well, no. It turns out to be Albert, who is Wolverine's android doppelganger, and also LCD's friend, and he's come from below to grab her head. But first of all, we're going to switch back to Wolverine and Nick Fury on board the chopper. You knew. He demands of Nick Fury, you never told me. What's the whole story? Best give it to me straight, bub. And this is an interesting little piece of characterization also from Larry Hama when it comes to Nick Fury. Fury's response is, I don't know the whole story, and what I know I can't tell. It's classified, ultra hush, and I swore the oath. And that's it for Fury. You know, Fury is an honourable man when it comes to the question of oaths and maintaining them. And so all he can do is apologise and offer Wolverine a cigar. That's a really, really nice sequence. So Wolverine isn't going to get the truth regarding his relationship to Sabretooth, or why Sabretooth believes that he's his father from Fury. Not in this issue anyway. And then we switch back to Albert, and there's the stealth bomber from a couple of issues ago. So he's been powering himself up in the husk of the stealth bomber, and he's able to hook up LCD with some power too, and she awakens. Oh, Albert, is that you? To be continued. So there you go. So part 2 of a 3-part story, and the rest of the issue, there's no pinups in this issue unlike the previous one, but there is 3 pages of readers' letters. You can see there, all of them very much filled with praise for the Larry Hama and Marc Silvestri run. And you also get a preview of the cover to Reign of Terror by Andy Kubert. So pencils and inks by Kubert there. It's a pretty nice image of Wolverine. And that is it. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Wolverine number 42. Part 2 of a 3-part story. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.